Hello, hello, and welcome to the show. Uh, this time I'm having special guest Connor Hammond on. He's an AI developer consultant, and we're going to talk about the future of app development in the world of AI because there's a lot going on and it's changing constantly. And with Apple's developer conference coming up in just a few months, there's a lot to talk about. So, Connor, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited for today and to get talking about AI and app intents. I think it's an exciting time and looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we met last summer at WWDC. I can't remember which coffee meetup it was, but one of those. But it was fun just
Yeah, one of them.
chatting early, and then basically we were both going to Deep Dish Swift in Chicago, and then WWDC coming up, and so we were both kind of like, "There's a lot going on. The world of vibe coding has just taken over," and that's I don't whether or not that's a great thing is a question and sort of what we want to talk about. But basically, I noticed that that whole world is changing. And then I'm coming from a deep world of app intents and how Apple's going to do things with Apple Intelligence. And there's just basically not enough conversation crossing over those two worlds of there's so much going on with app intents and then AI coding is changing everything. And so we were having a discussion uh, just over the phone, and we were like, why don't we just record this and make an episode out of it? So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that was a lot of fun last year, and I think I've thought about our conversation that we had at one of those coffee meetups a lot over the course of the past year, and so I'm glad that we're doing this because I think it's a very appropriate time for that, and I think we have a lot to look forward to.
absolutely. So yeah, let's just start in. So I think one of the, I mean, it's so weird now that vibe coding, if for anybody who hasn't heard of it, is the new way for. So, I mean, I don't, I can't even defend the. It's a whole partially controversial practice of just using AIs to generate good portions of your code base and have it write the code for you. And then instead of actually debugging, you just redo it with AI. Um, and so that's grown a lot. But I think the particulars of that, I think developers can always have their own particular opinions on. But it really just caught my attention to wow, this space is really changing. And what app development looks like 1 year from now could be just entirely different because we almost don't even know what your role is as a developer in writing the code versus designing and things like that. Um,
Yeah, vibe coding. It's in a very exciting time because I think the role of the developer is changing very fast. I see kind of new titles and ideas for what a developer is kind of evolve daily. It feels like I've seen like the term like product engineer, and the term of developer where you're more product focused and thinking more about the end user and distribution and things like that, or you're a vibe coder or an AI enabled or powered engineer. It's changing a lot. And I think it's a very exciting time because it brings in a whole new group of people into the consumer app space or any SaaS business or anything like that. You can take an idea, you can use AI, and you can ship in a weekend and you're off to the races. I also think it's really great for experienced developers because it changes what we can focus on. I think with our day to day, I found myself being a lot more end result focused as well. Think spending more time thinking about what I want my product to be, what I want the outcome to be, how the user's going to interact with it, more than just the technical aspects of things. I think AI
totally.
can do a lot of that for us. And it frees up a lot of creativity, which I think is really important right now.
What's kind of fascinating on the that's like why I used shortcuts in the first place is the ability to basically build in a tool without having to mess with the curly braces on the outside and things like that. But I think as most people know, building a shortcut is it that's like building the AI thing. Even if you could, you mostly just want the answer and get the result. And so I think
Right.
that's where this whole world is like taking things by storm, because even just as a user, I've noticed the role of an app and what I even need it for is changing, because there's a certain amount of like before you needed an app to be able to have and the affordances to get something done, whereas I chat isn't necessarily the best interface, but just the back end or the kind of processing that something like that can do is like it's for some apps it's not even worth using because I can just synthesize something elsewhere, and then the app is really almost a container for it, and that's where like the design part becomes really important as well.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen the idea floated around lately too, where it's like because of AI, if you just need a simple product or app or something, you can just put it together for your use case instead of going and paying for something else or whatever it is. Like you just get the end result, like you're saying. And I think it does change design a lot. There's a lot changing with how we're interacting with technology as a whole and how we're interacting with apps. I think apps are such a gateway into the way people use AI. And I think of it a lot as AI behind the scenes. I
Hmm.
think the really great products are going to be ones that deliver very intelligent solutions, and AI is just baked in, but it's not the selling point necessarily. Um, I think like chat is great for some things, but I don't think it's like the where we're going to end up necessarily. I was
Totally.
talking with, yeah, I was talking with someone just this last weekend about how chat's great, and then you get the result from talking with ChatGPT or something. But then it's like, what do you do with the rest of the information? There needs to be a layer
I
of
agree.
taking action with that, right? Like, I think there's going to be a lot of apps or businesses and stuff around solving going from a chat interface to actionable things.
Totally. I mean that's always been my like I think I was slow to adopt AI stuff because I saw App Intense and I saw that Apple is uniquely has this capability to do something, not just tell you the information. It's to put it somewhere, to send it to another spot. And it's also in a rich media format that I think is really interesting. That text is like by definition easier. I think that's why it's exploding right now. And I think it is essentially like almost as good or better than an app in some ways, is just because you can it doesn't take the affordances of designing those things and just the sort of you have to get it right versus chat you can just rewrite it or something like that. But then that's why like app intense is so crazy, is because it's not just like text as a like I remember tweeting at the Obsidian guy, which is an amazing app, but I was like plain text is like backwards thinking. Like there is so much more beyond like the metadata around this stuff is what's super interesting. And I think that's where App Intense and Apple, they're uniquely ahead while simultaneously very far behind on the LLM side. But I think the actual taking action, having a route for apps to understand what action to take, but then do it and move your data along too, is that world has always been incredibly exciting to me, and sort of why I've believed in workflow from the beginning, even when it was just URL schemes attaching things together, because that was just passing data in rich chunks just via links.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I remember the workflow days. I was pretty young and I was jailbreaking iPods and whatnot at the time, and
Nice.
workflow was a very exciting, safe way to kind of get more out of your device. And I think App Intense is exactly that now. I think that was probably one of the best parts of WWDC last year was App Intense, and just the doors that opened up, especially with this new era. Like connecting the things is what we need. I think that's why like MCP has taken off so much in the AI world, and it's Google recently announced their agent to agent protocol. And App
Let me
Intense is that for mobile.
totally. Let me just read a definition for
Yeah,
people who don't know because it's
perfect.
people in the dev world they just say MCP now and assume what you know what it means. But the Model
Yeah.
Context Protocol is an open protocol that enables seamless integration between LLM applications and external data sources and tools. Whether you're building an AI powered IDE, enhancing a chat interface, or creating custom AI workflows, MCP provides a standardized way to connect LLMs to the context they need. So this is why it kind of blows my mind sometimes when I feel like I'm shouting about how cool App Intense is and the actions and context part of Apple Intelligence, and then it's just like not. I mean, it's of course it's Apple because they're not doing anything with it. So as cool as it is to announce these things, it only matters when it's live. But building in this and reading into the developer APIs, you can really see how this is what workflow and shortcuts were for iOS is connecting your apps
Hmm.
together. And so Apple has this system and then LLMs have this system. And so that's where I think just that bridge across these is so fascinating because no one is even really exploring that world of like you can have an LLM talk to an LLM, but then can that use App Intents to talk to another app, and we can have like this whole chain where four different apps are involved, and each one is specialized with its AI use case. But then the apps provide the affordances of the design that we need, and then it all just basically works. I think this is where like it is kind of living in the future, and this is the same thing of like, well, yeah, that's why we're not going to get it for a year or two. So that's
Yeah.
this WWDC is going to be very fascinating with that.
I'll be very interested to see where they go with this. Because I think like even shortcuts and stuff is, in my opinion, like ahead of its time. Like it's such a great technology that I still think is very undervalued. And I think like with like app icons and stuff when it came out that you could create a shortcut to
Yeah,
your app and change the icons on your home screen, like that's was I think one of the widest adoptions of shortcuts. And it wasn't even really being used for what it's capable
and it
of.
wasn't
It's
even
just
good.
changing your
It just
icons.
it notified you.
Exactly.
Yeah, people just wanted that. I
Yeah.
think that's shortcuts as a front end for any of these things. Is I think that's always been my world, and I think what's hard about it is like shortcuts isn't the point. Just like MCP isn't the point. It is what you're trying to get done and whether or not there's a way to do it. And shortcuts usually gives that sort of affordance of like, can you put it on the home screen or put it in the control center or just have a thing that you can search and run. I think that still is incredibly powerful. Yeah, man, this whole
Yeah.
good.
No, it's exciting because I do think that's where we'll see the future of apps go, is that like web of interconnectivity. Um, and the capability is there. I think Apple gave us a really cool window into what they want Siri to be,
Totally.
whenever we get there. But like we can get really close now with App Intent. I don't think a lot of people are doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot in there that it's just not clear how deep you're supposed to go. And then I think the difference between shortcuts full experience from the workflow days that if you're someone like me that you've seen and understand that that's what it should be, that there should be a whole suite of actions just for your one app versus like the action button has been that's been the biggest wedge to get people into this world because it really is any action can be just assigned to that hardware button and that goes a long way and just only now is on all the iPhones too so that lag for users and then also companies adopting app intents. I will say I totally understand the APIs before this weren't very good or it's you always had the promise of what was coming but you could never really build it. And so I think a lot of people who are like into iOS development specifically only ever built those old versions, got burned by the APIs, and then are like, I don't really know how to invest in this in the new world. And then there's kind of you can build for the action button, you can build for control center and widgets, but like how do you design for Apple Intelligence is mostly not out yet. I will say I just worked with a client, Food Noms, and we just released a bunch of app intense stuff where you have a full suite of building in the app shortcuts to access the different parts of the app, and then it's all designed for Apple Intelligence too, because a lot of it you just build for your intent, and then once the domains are available, you just turn it on. So there's a lot there that I want to see a lot more from all of these. Like, I think this is why going into like what happens if Chat GPT adds app intent support, and they do have basic commands which are actually incredible. And I've seen another one of my clients, they built their custom shortcuts using Chat GPT's actions to just like do the hard part of the analysis, and then it's like, or just like turn this into a list, and then they pass that into their own app's actions and create a trip plan from it and stuff like that. So that's even this like third angle coming in of using AI within the shortcut and all of that. So I think that part is
Yeah,
fascinating.
I think it's so cool, and I think like it's interesting because the space, like I think the understanding of what the use cases and applications are, like I don't think we're quite there yet, and I think we're figuring it out. Similar
Yeah,
to MCP, like it was announced in November of last year, and then it just recently caught fire, I think, in the AI world. Um, and I think it had an advantage because AI is so hype right now. Everyone's, oh, like let's check this new thing out and see what we can do with it. I think App Intense has that same potential. And we'll see what Apple does with it this year in WWDC.
I think
But I
that
think
it's important that it's just already there too. Like they're not just
agreed.
starting. It's been around for a couple years. And so it's really had the time to get good, but at the same
Hmm.
time they're not pushing it. And so I think we will sort of see kind of what they announced last year. I mean, that's the whole thing with Apple Intelligence. Built for Apple Intelligence is the best marketing slash legal phrase ever. Um, but I think a lot of that will be revealed and then put into use. And I think that's I, what's always hard with Apple is there's like there's a certain amount of magic that they can do before they release anything, and then there's just the reality of them taking a long time to release. But I'm super interested because clearly they were going somewhere with this, and whatever this version is isn't just like the end result. There's more to build beyond this. And so I think Apple will have the unique part where the context that your phone and your apps have is way greater than anything that, even if now that ChatGPT has memory, that doesn't mean it has every single app you've ever used. And so that
Yeah.
depth of actual context and in a way that's private and secure and is built out through these affordances of design in apps is what's really cool versus like there's a certain amount that you can only ever chat about, and then beyond that you're not really going to use the tool. This is totally why like that space and action driven design built with AI, and like even just building app intents, the coding part of it using AI, because that's the design part is really harder. The coding the intents is a lot of template stuff. So like there is
Right.
a lot more room for experimentation, and I think that's what's super fascinating about what's coming now is like this. I was saying to you on our call is every 5 years there's the same opportunities you can redo them with new designs, but now like not having a 10-year-old legacy code base is like an advantage because you
Huge.
can, I mean, it depends on the, I saw someone else saying technical debt is an advantage because now you can just bust it all out and then you get up to where you were trying to be versus if you're just now starting to think about it, you're
Yeah, yeah,
behind as well. um,
exactly. I'm really hoping with iOS 19 we get some really cool examples of what Apple expects out of App Intents or what
yeah,
where they think it's going. I think notoriously they really rely on developers to guide them
yeah,
in these spaces. But I think with what feels like a relatively low adoption of App Intent since last year, that like we need the boost in the developer community that like MZP is getting in the AI community.
Totally.
Like we need direction, and developers like give us direction as well. I'm trying to find it myself, but I think like there's so much opportunity out there for like you're talking about like this context, personalized context is so valuable. And with ChatGPT's recent announcement of like their enhanced memory, where it can recall past chats better and just is way more context aware. And just an hour ago, they announced like a 1 million token context window with
Hell
their new
yeah.
model. And like these things are really going to make a huge difference in how we use AI because when you have really personalized workflow, it's going to accelerate so much more from, okay, I can get on and chat and, get some work done really fast and better than maybe I could do it, um, to this is tailored exactly to me and it's making my life better or my business better or my app better, because it's tailored exactly to you or your app or your business. And I think we're going to see a lot of acceleration in that way.
I agree. I'd still the killer thing would be, coming from my world at least, a shortcut that could build itself using AI and have that kind of context, because I think what I've always still I think will be really valuable is that shortcuts will always be open source. And so that's the thing that you can't do with AIs is understand how they got there, or like do it yourself without that. But if you had a shortcut that basically solved that problem in a sophisticated way to just get you that answer, but then it's like, hey, here's how we got there and here's how it works and how it's programmed and you can change it. That's been the key for me with workflow and shortcuts is the ability to build it and hook it into exactly how I want, versus it is like the text part has sort of generified everything into like a just one format. And I mean shortcuts has that same issue a bit of like suddenly I'm choosing from menus and now I don't have this interface. And so I think that's where like what happens when apps can run their own actions. And I mean, really, at a certain point, they've been really moving towards when you press something in the app, it will just run an intent soon. Like
Mhm.
that's how control center stuff works. And so there's a lot that's really, really close. And so, I mean, the weird thing that I've been going through the last couple weeks was the rumors about Siri and how what this version isn't going to get released. But I think it's for a while I had an existential crisis of like, are they going to get rid of app intents? And it's like, I don't think they could, because that's how your apps talk to the system now. Whether or not Apple Intelligence is just actions and personal context. And the way I described it to one of my clients was like one to one commands. It's like, do this and put it in this app will work, but do this and this won't work because it's just not designed for it yet. And that's where like if there was no competition, Apple's path is on a steady slope upwards of improving and getting better and building off of these things. It is like relative to AI though. It's like they've announced a thing, it moved on, announced a thing, moved on, and gone up and down. And it's just annuals. Apple's annual cycle just kind of doesn't almost even make sense in a world where AI stuff can enable speed up timelines. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe in the long run, having that attention is what really matters, and they can move an entire dev industry overnight just after WWDC. But
Yeah.
it does like take people like this just like understanding what they're even talking about. Because it
Right.
took me a long
Yeah.
time to like synthesize the APIs and parse that like their most recent developer session is the one explaining the last five, and that's where you should start and kind of thing. Like there's a lot of nuance there. And I think on the flip side though, AI stuff has made this, it's like a known entity now that you should be able to connect with other tools like MCP and stuff. Whereas I think a lot
Mhm.
of the indie world has always kind of been embedded in I'm my own app, my users just use my app and don't use any other apps, which is just never how it's been. And that's why I've
Yeah,
sorry, you're totally pulling out a long thread of just like I've been going crazy for years having workflow and shortcuts and this ecosystem that you can of tools to get your things done, and it's really just taken me investing a ton of time up front to do it all, and AI tools are now letting people do that other side. But oh man, it is that's why it's like
sure.
what these apps mean in 2 years should be something entirely different, and the capabilities and what they can hook into is so much more powerful and accessible to everyday people. I mean, I will say you can't vibe code an app in one night, which is what I was trying to do. Of just like, why can't I make a shortcuts library and then why isn't it already
Yeah.
done yet? But
Yeah, especially in native apps, it's really hard to do that. I do hope we get to the point where we can even just ask Siri and be like, "Hey, I need a workflow that does this, X, Y, and Z," and whatever model Siri is trained on, I hope can learn more about your personal context, what apps you have installed, what intents they've exposed to the system, and can help you come up with personalized workflows.
totally,
Um, for a desired outcome. I think that desired outcome point is really key for the future of apps because it's like, how does my app help someone achieve a desired outcome more than my app is a better way to interface with photos?
yeah,
I think apps as the facilitator of app intents and just system level possibilities are really important. I think that like I think of app intents kind of as like the way like you are letting people install new features onto their phone. Um, and I
hmm
think that is kind of like the gateway into a whole network of apps, like 4 or 5 apps working together to achieve a desired outcome. And I saw a concept recently about an operating system that was like completely powered on personalized context. And so, like, you look at your phone, and instead of just seeing your home screen, you see a synopsis of like what your calendar is looking like for the day, what you may need to do because of the events that are on your calendar, whether it's order an
hmm
Uber or make a phone call, follow up with a meeting. Like, I think apps are kind of going that way.
I'd say they already are. That sounds like the home screen and widgets and the Siri suggestions widget to me. Like just to, of course, I can benefit
Yeah.
to that, but
No, well, it's a great point because like we're kind of there, but I think we're going to see that even become more powerful. Um,
totally,
and I think a lot of the personalization features that exist are nice, but I don't really use them. I just don't think they're in my face or feel relevant enough now,
yeah.
at least in like what I do. But
Do
I
you
think
have
we
a
we can
home
make
screen
that
of
better.
16 icons or do you have widgets and stuff? Are you a
It's a mix. I've got like my calendar widget. I think I've got like my sleep widget, and then a to-do list widget, and then I've got a couple of apps
yeah,
that I use very regularly.
cuz I have all 16 home screens each with stacks of widgets and apps and then actions for them from shortcuts behind. So I think that's where there is a certain part of like I've been living in that world too, and I've seen some good posts about how like the widgets for AI apps are one of the biggest competing grounds right now because it is put. How do you get Chat GPT onto your home screen or Claude or something like that? It's through a
Yeah,
widget that you can immediately jump into the search or the camera or the voice modes. So like, and those are all powered by app intents. So that's where like I think that's what's so odd sometimes is it is like we are really close to that world, and it does just kind of take a little bit of synthesis on Apple's side to make those experiences better and to just surface the right things at the right times. Even the action button
totally.
changed changes everything because it is just like how do you run a shortcut when you're in an app already? There's no
Mhm.
way to just like unless they have a menu in there, but even that is kind of just like not the right kind of experience. Dude, this is
Yeah,
fascinating because
it's
s-
so
I
interesting.
mean, we've barely even talked about the part where do you think developers should be using AI in their development process right now? Because like vibe coding is obviously a one world that is like maybe don't one shot your entire code base unless you have it backed up to
Yeah,
GitHub. But
right. There's better ways to use AI in your dev workflow. And that's part of why I've gotten into consulting lately is to help people find these opportunities and become more efficient with that. Because vibe coding is cool, but it's not, I think, the end goal. I think like ultimately consumers don't want to be making their own apps. I think there's a group of people that enjoy that and that haven't been able to access that before. I think that's great. But now I think that using AI, like you got to think of it as like a personal assistant or a team of people working with you. So I've seen developer workflows that connect your ticket tracker to your IDE, to your LLM that you're interacting with, and to your deployment process. And so it's like AI is tying all these things together, and you're able to just live in something like Cursor and say, hey, what ticket is up next? And it can pull from linear what needs to be worked on next. And you can use AI to write very detailed tickets so that the LLM has great context of the ticket and your project inside of Cursor.
yeah,
And then you can basically ask it to fix it, fixes the bug, and then pushes the update and can update the status of the ticket.
that's
Like those
wild.
kind of workflows are, yeah, it's crazy. And it's like, it's just saving a little bit of time here and there, but it really adds up. And like it's less context switching, it's less thinking about what's going on. And for developers that just like to sit down and get work done and code, it's like that's so much easier now because you can save so much time on all these other processes.
Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
even what you were saying before too of like with that time think more about just the problem at hand and not like is this list in the right spot or whatever. That's I think that's why
Exactly.
I've always avoided the programming part is I want the workflow of the program, not the programming side of it.
Yeah, right. And AI is really good at like kind of helping eliminate those tedious, like monotonous things that developers deal with on a daily basis. Tiny little adjustments or like, something's just not quite right, and you spend hours trying to fix this thing. Prompting is a huge or like a very highly valuable skill right now, and I think everyone
Yeah.
should learn how to prompt properly and do it well. I see kind of developers that are new to AI use a couple of sentences and then get frustrated with the result. And it's
I don't
like,
do
I
that well.
understand. Well, it's like I understand the frustration, but there is a skill of prompt engineering that can solve that
Yeah.
because AI is very capable. And if you know how to guide it well and use it well, it unlocks a whole new superpower for you. Um, and like knowing how to prompt well is going to help you get rid of those tedious and monotonous tasks. It's going to help you debug better. It's going to help you optimize your code better. Um, and so,
Yeah.
and there's, I'm sure caveats to all that I'm saying, but it's like, this is the potential and the reality that we're living in now. And it's just going to keep getting better and more capable. And so it does free up all this time for creative thinking. How do you problem solve? How do you instruct the LLM to problem solve for you? Like, I like to think of it like if you had a junior engineer, you had to teach how to do something, that's how you should be instructing the LLM,
Yeah.
giving it context, giving it even step-by-step instructions. I think that's becoming less important now because these models are getting more capable,
Yeah. That's
but
good.
like really informing it, you can get really impressive results. I met a guy just recently who is non-technical 4 months ago, started learning prompting, just interacting with LLMs, and he has been able to use some of these Gen AI services to go from like a discovery call to a fully designed like application that is consistent in its design and functionality and is right on par with the backend and the database. Like it's kind of a developer's dream of what a designer would hand off to you.
Yeah.
And it's because he spent hours like learning how to prompt and fine tuning his prompts. And so he can kind of plug and play now
Yeah,
and
that's incredible.
design pretty decent apps that a developer can take and hand off and use AI to get it coded really fast. So,
That's where like I've seen so much that it is like knowledge isn't really the issue. It is like agency now. Is like choosing to do this and being willing to
yeah.
go that deep and not like I get frustrated writing the prompt because I'm just like, shouldn't it figure this out? But like I thought of these other things. It's like to just give it that context that is in your head and then it can and have the patience to keep adding that information and it can go really far.
Mhm.
I will say my challenge for anyone who's listening who's a developer is just give it a really good app intense prompt and build out that part of like I want to think about my app from an actions based world and future proof for AI and app intense and what Apple's doing and learn all that part. And I mean that's
Yeah.
you could probably tell me how to write a better prompt than that, but that's where like
You're on the right track, though. It's like,
yeah.
do that. Absolutely do that.
Totally. I see some
Yeah.
comments too about like, do you envision that shortcuts or app intents will interact with AI apps on the back end? And then um, also, like, I would love to see Apple create an agent framework. I think that's where app intents is there. I think it just kind of does rely on them doing more with Siri and bringing that. It sounds like Siri is the agent already, and but that's where I just like I feel a reticence in my body of just like that being good and reliable will take them like 3 years just because they're not willing to
Yeah.
put out a version that isn't perfect or whatever. And that I think that's gonna be the hardest part is just like seeing that future and then watching someone next to you vibe code an app in a weekend. But then like I mean we were even talking like how do you make an app that lasts for the long term and things like that. Before there was an implied just like no one else is going to copy your idea in the next 3 years, but like if someone can do it in a weekend or like what does your user even need a year from now because AI is changing everything versus like uniquely solving problems now that we can with AI is still worth exploring, especially if you cannot it doesn't take 3 years and it does take 3 months instead.
Yes. I agree with you. I think that's a unique challenge, especially for native iOS devs right now,
Yeah, if you
is
live in Apple's world.
planning for the future, but living a little bit behind with Apple from a consumer perspective. It's like I agree with you that I think the framework for agents is to an extent Siri and app intents and all that interconnectedness, but it's not there yet.
Mhm.
We need we need all this stuff to be connecting and working really well together. Excuse me. And I think we're close, and I think Apple will get there. Um, but like right now, we kind of just have to try and fill in the gaps.
Yeah,
But I think designing your app, planning for the future, how is my app gonna, provide a good solution to a problem, and how is that, I guess, service or feature set going to work with other agents or AI or other apps or Siri, what Siri can do, like all these things, like be thinking about how your app is kind of a piece of a puzzle, a much bigger
totally.
puzzle, I think is a feature. Because, like you said, like your idea that if you take the time and you build it and then it takes 3 years and someone copies it because it caught on, like that's very much in the past. Um, I think there's a whole different world of moats right now for your apps, and I think
Yeah,
designing more than ever with the user experience in mind and with AI in mind is very crucial right now.
I agree. Especially just because it is that fundamental thing of like, why don't I just ask ChatGPT instead of using this app? And but then also
Yeah.
just how do you make it a good experience in the long run that you want to interact with and is just fast on mobile? Like the whole mobile part of this, I think has been I love because I feel like Silicon Valley like forgot about mobile for like 5 years, and it was just like everyone's just on their computers mining crypto or something, and it's like What happened to
Yeah.
the 10 years before that where everyone was obsessed with mobile and how most people aren't on their computers? Like, I still have that issue with AI that it feels like I have to use a computer to do work with it. Personally, I can talk to ChatGPT and get all the value just from the voice mode, essentially, because I don't need to like write anything. I'm just doing stuff in my life. But that whole world of like how do you actually get things done, to me it's always been shortcuts too, and I've been living there, and it's you build it on the desktop and use it on mobile,
Yeah.
or it adapts to the framework that you're using. That's the whole part of app intents as well. Oh man, this stuff
I
is
agree.
awesome. That's what go ahead. Sorry, I don't want to.
It's exciting. No, I do think a big piece of the future of AI is in mobile apps.
Yeah.
Um, and that's either through app intent, interacting with agents in the back end, or I just think that consumer apps are back. I don't think they ever went away, but like they're huge right now.
Yeah.
And because you've got all these like vibe coded apps that are super trendy and really exciting. I hope they last a long time because I think they're coming out with some really cool stuff from perspectives of people that aren't developers
That's the cool
that
part
add
for
a
sure.
lot. They, yeah, they add a lot to the community and what's possible and just thinking about what you do with an app. And I think, like you said, like people that want to use AI and are really into these things, like the Studio Ghibli trend that was very recent, like people are not going to wait and go to their desktop and do that.
Yeah,
Just the
totally.
general person. They want it on their phone or on their wrist, and they want it actionable and quick. And so I think like as hardware gets more powerful to where you can have larger local models, so you're not relying on an internet connection or internet speed. You can do it all on device. I think that's going to be huge. And I think like people just want mobile,
Totally.
and that's been true for a long time.
I think what's cool about Apple devs specifically, and I want this skill to be married with those newer people as well, not just from an older world, but like people want good apps too. They don't just want an app
Mhm.
that can do it. And you can vibe code the thing that shows it to you, but then unlike where's the widget? That kind of stuff. I think getting a whole complete like minimal viable experience, but it's still a full app, I think is the part that vibe coding and app intents and AI need to meet in the middle of. Like, you need to understand that app intents and shortcuts stuff is how the best apps work. It's not just an app and the interface and that you didn't have to code the interface or whatever. It's like, how does
Yeah.
this fit into the ecosystem is really important. And that's where it's even you can vibe code an app and get a million users in a weekend, but how do you get 10 million that stay around for years? And like you really provide that value. I think is there's just so much that previously was like, yeah, we'd love to, but it's hard to get there, and now it's like it's not as hard. And I think the people are craving it too. Like, we all have high standards, and I think that AI will help us
Yeah.
get there while also like lowering some standards. And that's why it's like, how do you push those to push it in a way that uses AI but doesn't lower your standards in the process?
I agree with you. I think the bar has been very much raised with AI with so many things, but I think like the user experience is one of those. Because like you said, like still these vibe coded apps that are done really quickly are great. But I just not all of them are long-term plays. And I think that mobile developers right now have a unique advantage and a skill that I think is more valuable than potentially even their technical skills is the thinking that comes with developing mobile apps, which is
Yeah.
the user experience, and then like the longevity, like you're
Limitations.
talking about, like
Yeah.
yeah, like what works on mobile and what doesn't. Like that perspective is really valuable right now because like designing your app just to work with the system, like oh, this app is great and it has a widget and it has lock screen shortcuts and whatever else. Like those things are really important, and I think they really matter to users. And if they don't matter to users now, they definitely will very soon.
Well, it's
Um,
totally like when there's another vibe coded alternative and one of them has widgets and one of them doesn't, why
yeah,
would you not pick the one that's essentially better. And I think that's where like the
Agreed.
switching cost is like, how do you continue to differentiate in the world of AI too, is through a lot of these integrations.
I think so too, and this is part of my internal conflict of going back and forth from like cross-platform development and native development is
Oh boy.
like AI does like stuff like React Native really well because it's got years of training data. Definitely be careful because some of the older stuff is not as great as the new stuff. But like those cross-platform frameworks don't have app intents out of the box day one,
Yeah.
like Swift gets. And that is such a huge competitive advantage for like kind of the future of your app is how well does it integrate with your device. And I think that that's just something that's very important to be focusing
Yeah.
on right now.
It makes me think about how either Apple or like me should go to talk to some of those platforms of just like, you guys need to do all of this, not just the how do you make an app. It's like, this is, I think that is a whole other stream for another time of like what makes
For sure.
a power user app and why aren't all apps like this. And there's that whole thing that I said of development issues and stuff like that is probably why. But I think what's so cool is just compared to the day before they announced Apple Intelligence versus after for the dev world is like that interest totally flipped. Everyone is very intrigued by it now. And then I think the AI stuff will make it a lot more accessible. I was saying
Mhm.
the other day that what's the hardest part of where we're at now is that we're not in the world of artificial intelligence as like AI as you thought of it in a sci-fi movie, but we're super in the world of intelligent assistants. And I think
Yeah.
the last 10 years they've been selling us on intelligent assistants and they haven't been, but now we actually have them, except asterisk around Siri. But
Yeah.
otherwise it is really worth it to get that benefit, like just for personal reasons. Or I think there's, of course, you gotta prompt engineering and knowing how when it's wrong and what you want is better than what they're suggesting is still really important because it's not perfect, but it's not nearly like
Yeah.
what it was a year or two ago where it would just completely hallucinate in the random in the middle of things and you're like, what is going on? Like it's actually pretty trustworthy, and especially that's why vibe coding was like a mark that de- it's worth it for dev work now too, and you have to have the same amount of care that normal dev work has, but it is like you can
Yeah.
have that intelligent assistant going with you. So it's cool.
Agreed. It's like you're
Go ahead.
yeah, your technical skills and knowledge are still valuable. But you won't be replaced by AI, but you definitely will be replaced by someone else using AI.
Totally.
And like that's where we're at. And I think if you're avoiding AI or against it, like now's the time to dive in, start playing with it, start learning it because like the future is here. We're leaving. Another quote that I really like recently is like we're leaving the information age and we're in the intelligence age
Hmm.
now.
That's cool.
Um, yeah, it's like more we don't just have generic apps anymore. It's a one size fits all. It's personalization and customization and interconnectivity with AI and stuff. Like that's kind of where we're going and where we're at. And people want personal, authentic experiences, even in your apps,
Yeah.
especially in your apps, because like your device is very personal to you. And if you have solutions or capabilities that are even more personal, like I think there's lots of value there.
Yeah. I agree. I think I can't wait for Dub Dub. That's I feel
I'm
like
so
we're
excited.
afterwards after the announcements we're just gonna be like, dude, it's here or whatever. Like I don't know. It's that's so interesting. And yeah, just seeing what Apple does with App Intense would be really exciting. I had heard some like little birdies kind of saying that they had worked on some actions for that were supposed to be in shortcuts that never materialized. So
Hmm.
I in my mind they have this whole suite that they've been building up and were going to release last year and just didn't yet. And I don't know if that's real, but I'd love it. If
Yeah,
anything, apps can do it themselves too. I think that's where like I don't know. I'm in a unique spot because I worked on the app and would have been on that team, and my job pretty much would have been sharing about App Intense with people. But I can really see where that future is coming. And I think uniquely Apple's whole built for Apple intelligence, like marketing, it's not actually here yet. It's built for that. That's what App Intense is you can build for Apple Intelligence and all of this stuff before it's here. And as long as you're just hooked into these things,
Yeah.
it's all going to work. And so that's where like don't wait because I mean you obviously can get the AI to give you some time back now, which is true. I guess that wasn't true before, but still just it's thinking about these things from that whole new perspective going forward, I think is going to be really important.
Yeah, I think so too. I love what App Intense opens up right now, and I do think like Apple is buttering us up a little bit for a whole new world of possibility there, and a lot cooler things than we even have at the moment. I think there may be a certain level of pessimism about what the dub is going to be this year, but personally, like I'm excited because I think that whatever they do, like we're going to be moved closer to I think the value of app intents and AI,
Yeah.
and I think that's kind of where they're going,
Well,
or at least hoping they're going. So
it's true that
yeah,
like if you don't care about app intents in this stuff or AI, what they're doing isn't as exciting. But thinking about it holistically from this world and from what like users are actually going to do, I think that's the part that's like no matter what, people are going to be using something like ChatGPT more, and so I think a lot of devs are going to have this slow trickle where they lose users to stuff like that. And it's rather
yeah,
than wait for that and be behind, start thinking now about how to live in that future world. And Apple will kind of like because App Intense is an MCP like protocol, it does just plug in and then move to wherever else is built next. So that's why it's a data layer for your app to communicate with the system. And otherwise, it'll just be LLM magic on top.
yeah, exactly. Like it just changes where your value comes from, I think, and what makes your app unique, and like because now you can make your app work with Siri. Like
Yeah,
I
people still
don't even see a
fundamentally
ton of
don't get that.
yeah. It's like sure, Apple's not just handing it to you, but they are. I mean, like App Intense is here, and you can do that. You can ask, your assistant to book you something.
I
Crumble
will
cookies is
say,
the first example that comes to mind. You can order crumble cookies with App Intense right now,
I think
like
what's hard is you do have to say the trigger phrase and then the next step.
for
And that's
sure.
where, like, it's not all just one. And that's where when you can just give it a
Yes.
blob and it can figure out which intents to run and what parts are referring to your personal context, that's when it's wild. And that's where Siri is like they are so close. Whether or not Apple can poach the right people from other companies or whatever, that's like the fundamental issue at a certain point is just that they live in one part of California and don't let anyone else work for them remotely. So like
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like that natural language processing and stuff is going to be huge because people don't want to remember the commands that they need to know to use your app with Siri. That's where we're at right
so
now, and I think people should take advantage of
do
that,
you know
but
about
it needs
semantic
to be
matching
better.
with Siri and App Intents? Like that is a feature that does exist that Siri can semantically match what your command to the intent. And that's been around for 2 years. And that was a good example
Oh,
of
I see.
just like, but the way it does it versus the way ChatGPT is doing it is different. But that's where like
Hmm.
it's all there and they're just not connecting it. And so that's why I'm intrigued. I feel like we should wrap up because
Yeah,
we have endless parts to talk about. But
for sure,
this
for
is
sure.
awesome, and I feel like we should just do an exact follow up from this summer after WWDC because
We should.
there's so
It'd
much
be
to talk
awesome.
about. And
Yeah.
I will, I want you to teach me some prompt engineering skills in the background or something too, because I do want to. I've been wanting my own
Yeah.
shortcuts library app, and that would be pretty sick. And it would have to have app intents. So otherwise, what am I
Yeah,
doing? Like,
for sure. I'd love to. I think it's a great skill to learn right now. I myself just got certified in prompt engineering and
oh,
getting better
glad
with
to
it
hear
every
that. That
day.
was a thing.
So yeah, yeah. So I'd love to help you out with that. And anyone else that has questions, shoot me a message. We can talk.
Cool. Where can people find you?
Probably the best spot is Twitter. I'm pretty active on there, and my website's a good way to get in contact with me as well.
Cool. So I'll have that in the show notes and everyone can follow you there. Well, thank you so much. This is almost exactly an hour. I feel like we're going to be right there. So thank you for the time and thank
Perfect.
you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see where this goes. I think there's many more conversations to come from this. So
Totally. Awesome. Well, let's talk again this summer. All
let's
right.
do it.
See you, everyone.
See ya.